Viva FM, the number one choice in Leeds.
So that might be a slightly long-winded answer. I apologize if it
Oh,
is.
thank you very much for that. Yeah, we want to know
It-
every little sign, really, to look
yeah.
out for. And of course, there is plenty of help available as well for these people. What is the best way would you recommend, Keith?
Well, actually, unfortunately, I would disagree with you. There isn't enough help.
Right, okay.
And in fact, there's nothing like enough help. I'll give you a couple of stats at the moment,
Yeah,
and
please, yeah.
it's the reason I work proactively, and I'll explain that in a minute. But before lockdown, before the COVID and all the rest of it,
Yeah.
the stat that everybody was using in terms of mental health was 1 in 4 people have a recognized mental health issue in any 1 year.
1 in 4.
Yeah, so that's 25% of the population have a significant recognized mental health issue. That was before the lockdown.
Really?
Now that's one stat. The other stat is, at the same time, only 3% of the population were going to therapy.
Oh, I see, right.
And that's a massive, great gap. And the reason for that is that 1 to 2 year waiting lists for mental health therapy on the NHS are extremely common. In fact, all over the country, that's the case. In one area of South London, it's actually 4 years.
Yeah.
Tell somebody that's got depression that they've got to wait 1 year, let alone 4 years. It's hopeless.
Of course. Yeah.
And the reason behind that, I'm afraid, is that only 13% of the NHS budget goes on mental health.
I mean, as you is right in the news at the moment, NHS is getting a lot of money now. Obviously, our pension contributions are going up as well. Would you think that would help, or is this one of the priorities? Mental health.
There's a couple of things there. I did a presentation actually in our local town hall a couple of weeks ago, and I was explaining all this, and a lady said, well, the government's putting millions of pounds into one of the mental health initiatives. And I said, look, I'm really sorry, millions of pounds won't even touch the side. We're talking billions.
Really?
If you want to help those 22% of people who are struggling but can't access therapy, you are talking billions and billions of pounds. That's the one problem. And of course, with all the costs that the government have got with COVID, understandably, they've got lots of different priorities. And unfortunately, what will happen is, I think, a lot that money is so the billions actually that the government is putting into the NHS rather won't go on mental health, because what they're looking to do is catch up with the waiting lists on things like cancer, heart disease. Quite rightly, that's an absolute priority. But the problem is, there are people out there with suicidal thoughts and self-harming, and actually that's just as urgent. But I'm afraid the way we see mental health, that's not up there. That's not at the same level on the priority list.
Mark, would you know how many people suffer from this do actually go on to take their own lives?
Oh, a lot, I'm afraid. And one of the really worrying things is that for the young people, it's almost worse. So there's a lot of people haven't heard of this, but there's something called CAMS, which is the Child and Adolescent Mental Health Services. And 66% of children are, even though they've been referred by a doctor, a GP, are turned away from CAMS, even if they're self-harming and they have suicidal thoughts, because the capacity isn't there.
Right.
There just aren't. And the problem is, and it's the same in the care sector, the people that are in the therapists and the carers are so overworked, they are so stressed.
Yes.
And I've just had a client recently who's a local art therapist actually, but she's part of the CAMS group. She works with children and adolescents. Her 2 bosses have resigned with burnout, and 4 out of 6 of her colleagues have been off with stress and anxiety for longer than 3 months.
Yes.
And she's having to turn these kids away every week.
Oh dear.
So I don't want to sound, too glum, but it's the reason that we've got to start paying attention to mental health on a completely different level and in a completely different way, because the big question I have is, why is everything to do with mental health reactive? In other words, we wait until somebody's really ill and then they go and see the doctor, and if they're lucky they get to see a therapist, or of course they get put on antidepressants. And in fact,
yeah, of course, yeah, we are actually sounding a bit glum anyway, but I mean, can we is there any other way people can help
well,
themselves?
yeah, I see that yes, there is. I've spent the last 20 years, initially I thought I was a psychotherapist,
Right.
but actually what I've been doing is I've been teaching and coaching people. So I've been teaching people how their mind works. So just as an example, most people are not aware that 91% of our mind is unconscious. Therefore, 91% of how we create our reality on a moment by moment basis is unconscious. And the big question is, how much do we know about our unconscious? The answer is nothing, because we've never been taught it, particularly at school. But however, and that's what I've been doing for 20 years. I've been teaching people how their mind works, how and why they're creating the stress and the anxiety and the depression, and then what to do about it. And the big issue is, because we treat mental health reactively as though it's an illness.
Yes.
And that's the problem. We regard stress, anxiety, and depression as illnesses. They're not, at least not to start with. What they are is a message from our system, a tap on the shoulder saying, oi, mate, your life's not working. There's something wrong.
Yes.
Pay attention, have a look, find out what it is and deal with it. Now, if we do that when we've got mild stress or mild anxiety, we deal with it and the anxiety and the stress go away. Right. And the depression, exactly the same. But we don't do that, partly because there's still shame and stigma around it. We bottle it up, especially men, by the way. We bottle it up and we ignore it. Well, if you ignore it, it's going to get worse. If you avoid it, it's going to get worse. And the problem is it becomes completely internalized, both physically, hormonally, and mentally. So the thought process is, as I say, the mind just gets out of control, and it just spirals gradually worse and worse and worse. And when you're in a really bad place, you have no idea what's going on in your head. And that's where I found myself 22 years ago. And luckily for, well, in a way, luckily for me, I come from a family that doesn't do medication unless it's literally life-threatening.
All right.
What I didn't realize at the time, it was life-threatening, because that's the state I was in. But I decided I knew the problem was in my head. It wasn't out there in the world. The problem was actually in my head. And I'm very curious. So I wanted to know what the hell was going on. So I started by reading books on how the mind works. And the more I read, the more I thought, oh my God, this is absolutely... Is
there any specific kind of book or any book?
Oh, books. No, books on how the mind works.
Right. Okay.
I could probably turn the camera and show you. I've got two massive, great bookshelves. I've got something like 450 books.
Oh, wow. Oh, amazing.
Well, because just as a topic, I've just gobble these books up. The mind is so fascinating, so interesting. So what I'm doing, coming back, is I'm teaching people how their mind works, how they're creating the stress and the anxiety and the depression, why it's there, and what they need to do about it. So that is what I call self-awareness, because 91% of our mind is unconscious, and we know nothing about our unconscious. I argue that virtually everybody walking around is not self-aware.
Yes.
We assume self-awareness applies to the conscious part of the mind, but that's only 9%. And the other big issue, and this is so big for the youngsters, we are brought up to worry about what everybody thinks about us. That's how we're brought up. And the problem with that is, if we're constantly worrying about what other people think about us, what that means is we're not comfortable with who we are.
Yes, of course, yeah.
So I always ask people, how many people in your life do you reckon have self-esteem? How many people in your life do you reckon are comfortable in their own skin? And it's a serious question. And on average, and I've been asking that question for nearly 18 years, And I do quite a few speaking engagements, and quite often I ask the audience, to put their hands up so I can measure it.
Yeah, I
And
see.
the average answer is between 3 and 5. So of all the people we know in our life, only 3 to 5 of them are comfortable with who they are.
Really?
Yeah, it's shocking. Now,
It
there's
is shocking.
there's degrees, obviously, of self-esteem. There's degrees of being happy with yourself. But again, one of the scary stats is from the Prince's Trust. They do an annual survey of young people's mental health.
Yes.
And in June this year, 47% of young people were struggling with thoughts of self-loathing.
Oh dear. Oh dear.
And the thing is, if you hate yourself, which is what that means, if you hate yourself, it completely colors how you create your reality. It completely colors how your world is. And if you hate yourself, your chances of being happy are very small. But all of that sounds terrible. But one of the questions I actually asked was 2 questions I asked. One is, how many people in your life actually matter? In other words, how many people does it actually matter what they think of you? And the answer for most people is about 12 to 15. So it's their immediate family and their mates, and it's only their best mates. And the
Mark,
fact is, nobody else matters.
yes, true. It's a subject we can talk for hours and hours.
Yeah, I know. I'm really sorry. And I always warn people when they contact me for an interview, I can talk about this for Britain. So
well, we would love to have you again to, maybe expand on this and carry on about it. If you like to sort of, I think my video is gone again. If you like to give us, how people, if they need any help, how can they get in touch with you or your website? They can.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. The website is www.headucate, as in headucate.me.
Right.
And on there, what I've basically done is I've taken my 20 years of experience and the 3,000 clients that I've seen and helped. I've taken that experience and put it into an app. So that can be, can be accessed on your phone, and it's basically the teaching and the coaching that I do with my one-to-one clients put into an app. So there's videos on the teaching, and then there's exercises for people to fill out. And there's a free trial. So if somebody wants to give it a go, that's the best way to access it.
Oh, that's brilliant.
And also what we're talking is we're only literally talking £10 a month while they use it. So it's, it's very cheap. And that what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to reach as many people as I possibly can.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant.
In fact, what I'm hoping to do, and then I will shut up, by the way, I'm starting a tour of town halls and city halls. And those talks are for free because, people need to...
Leeds, that's where we are. Is that on the
Yes, exactly. Well, I will definitely be in touch with you guys when I come up to Leeds.
Brilliant.
And it's a 1-hour talk, and it shows people walk away looking at mental health from a completely different perspective, which is always my goal. And secondly, everybody, well, not everybody, I think the stats are 93% of people walk away much more confident and they can manage their own mental health. So this is possible proactively, and that's my big message.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much. I'm feeling so good just talking to you for half an hour.
Oh, brilliant. Okay. Well, that's great. And if you want to, contact me again, please do anytime, literally anytime.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much. And you have a very, very nice day.
Yeah, you too. Nice to meet you.
Thank you. Bye.
All right. Cheers. Bye.